My desk at Vance Crichton Investments was the only place that ever felt truly mine, not the Lincoln Park apartment with its cold, minimalist furniture Leo had picked to impress clients. Here, surrounded by the soft glow of three monitors, the hum of the server down the hall, and the familiar scent of stale coffee and ozone, I was in control. Columns of numbers obeyed me. Market predictions, when treated with enough skepticism and rigorous modeling, could be coaxed into revealing their secrets. Human beings, I had learned, were a far less rational asset class. The call came at 3:17 p.m., a Tuesday. I was elbow deep in a sensitivity analysis for a biotech startup that burned cash faster than a Californian wildfire. My personal phone, a sleek, silent thing I kept face down on the desk, vibrated with a specific, jarring rhythm. Leo, a sigh escaped me before I could stop it. Not now. The last urgent call had been because he couldn't find the insurance documents for his precious BMW. The one before that, a melodramatic panic about a suspicious mole that turned out to be a speck of pepper. I let it go to voicemail. 30 seconds later, it buzzed again and again, a classic Leo maneuver, the relentless, performative urgency. Silly Vance, I answered, my voice flat, professional, giving nothing away. Silly, you need to come home. Now, his tone was strange, not the usual wheedling or manufactured crisis. It was stiff, almost formal, like a bad actor reading a line he didn't understand. I'm in the middle of evaluation. Leo, what is it? It can't wait. It's important. Just get here. A pause. It's about us. Us. The word felt alien, a relic from a dead language. There was no us. There hadn't been for years. There was a legal entanglement, a shared address, and a history of exhaustion. I'll be there when I'm done, I said, already moving my mouse to save my work. Not because he commanded it, but because I knew from bitter experience that he wouldn't stop. He'd call the front desk next, or show up here. The path of least resistance, for now, was to get it over with. Now, silly. The steel in his voice was new, or maybe it was just bad acting. I'm not asking. I ended the call without another word. My colleague, Ben, peered over the partition. Trouble in paradise? He asked, his voice lightly teasing. My marital disinterest was office lore, a quiet, accepted fact, just a liquidity event. I said, shutting down my monitors. The joke was dry, for my benefit only. Ben chuckled, not getting it. The L ride to the Fullerton station was a blur of noise and motion. I didn't fret. I calculated. If he'd finally run up a debt he couldn't sweet-talk his way out of. I had my separate accounts, locked down. If it was another plea for couples therapy, his code for me, sitting silently while a therapist validated his feelings. I had a list of rebuttals ready. The last one, 6 months ago, had ended with him shouting that I was an emotional iceberg and the therapist gently suggesting perhaps we consider a trial separation. Leo had stormed out. I'd stayed to book 2 more solo sessions. I used my key. The familiar click of the deadbolt was usually a sound of mild dread. Today, it was just a sound. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Her perfume, something cloying and expensive, with notes of jasmine and vanilla, cutting through the sterile citrus cleaner our bi-weekly maid used. It hung in the air of our perfect, unlived-in living room. Then I saw them. Leo sat ramrod straight on the large, uncomfortable, Eames sofa he'd bought for a price that still made me wince. He was wearing his serious meeting shirt, the pale blue one, and next to him, tucked into the curve of his arm as if she'd been molded there, was a woman. She was all flowing chestnut hair, a suspiciously pouty mouth, and a dress that probably had a name I didn't know. Brie. It had to be. I'd seen the credit card receipts for dinners at RPM Steak. The hotel charges in Miami he'd claimed were for a client retreat. I'd just never bothered to confront him. Confrontation required emotional energy. and I'd allocated all of mine to surviving my job and the slow-motion train wreck of my marriage. 2 suitcases, the large, hard-shell Tumi set my parents had given me for a long-ago honeymoon, stood neatly by the door, like waiting airport luggage. Leo cleared his throat. Silly, thank you for coming. I didn't move from the foyer. I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. You said it was important. It is. He gestured to the woman, who offered me a smile so full of sympathetic condescension it was almost impressive. This is Bree. Hi, silly, Bree said, her voice a soft, southern-tinged drawl that felt as real as the veneer on our coffee table. I've heard so much about you. What had she heard? That I was the frigid, workaholic wife who didn't appreciate her charming husband? Probably. I wish I could say the same. I replied, my voice even. I looked at Leo. What's the play? Leo, you finally run over the neighbor's dog and need me to pay the vet bill? His jaw tightened. The jabs about money always landed. This isn't a joke. We need to talk. About our future. Our future? I let out a short, humorless laugh. Leo, I filed dissolution papers 2 years ago. You refused to sign them. You cried. You threatened to call my partners and tell them I was having a nervous breakdown. You showed up at my office with a dozen wilted roses. We don't have a future. We have a stalemate. Bree placed a carefully manicured hand on Leo's arm, a show of support. He patted it, drawing strength from the gesture. Things have changed, he said, puffing out his chest a little. I've changed. Meeting Bree, she's shown me what real love is, what happiness can be. He was reciting lines from a daytime soap. I half expected a swelling violin track. I can't live a lie anymore. I can't live in this icebox of a marriage. I stared at him. The absurdity of it was breathtaking. He couldn't live a lie. He was trapped. So, I said, nodding slowly, let me make sure I understand the narrative. After a decade of marriage, after years of me asking, then begging, then paying a laierdo get you to agree to a divorce, you've suddenly found moral clarity, and it conveniently coincides with you meeting someone new. And the first act of this newfound integrity is to pack my bags without asking and summon me here for a performance. Do I have the beats right? His composure cracked. Just a little. He wasn't getting the reaction he'd scripted. There were supposed to be tears, begging, a scene. I was ruining his moment of triumphant self-actualization. It's over. Silly. He snapped, the faux calm evaporating. I want a divorce. A real one. I'm in love with Bree, and we're going to be together, properly. Bree chimed in, her voice dripping with saccharine pity. We really do hope you can find it in your heart to understand. Everyone deserves to pursue their happiness. Silly. Leo's been so unfulfilled for so long. That did it. A spark of genuine anger. Hot and clean. Cut through the fog of my contempt. Unfulfilled. With the Lakeview apartment, the luxury car leases he couldn't afford, the watches, the clothes all subsidized, in part, by the emotional iceberg with the steady, high-paying job, the same iceberg he drained for investment capital for schemes that never materialized, for loans to cover business shortfalls that never got repaid. I pushed off the doorframe and walked slowly into the room. I stopped in front of them, looking down. I didn't look at Bree. I kept my eyes locked on Leo's. He had the good grace to look momentarily uncertain. Leo, I said, my voice so quiet he had to lean forward slightly. Then I let a slow, genuine smile touch my lips. You're doing me a bigger favor than you'll ever know. He blinked. Bree's sympathetic mask slipped a fraction. The only thing I regret, I continued, the smile still in place, is not charging you rent for the last 3 years. Market rate for a room in this neighborhood, with utilities and cleaning included. I'd be looking at a significant return on my, let's call it, emotional investment. His face flushed to deep, mottled red. You bitch. He hissed, the gentleman's facade shattering completely. You cold, calculating bitch. This is what I mean. You have no heart. You just see everything as a transaction, and you see everything as an opportunity to take. I shot back, my calm finally fracturing at the edges. You took my time. You took my peace of mind. And you sure as hell took my money. Packing my bags is the first honest thing you've done for me in years. I turned and walked to the suitcases. They were light. He'd only packed clothes, probably dumping things in without looking. My files, my grandmother's china, my professional equipment, all still here. I gripped the handle of one suitcase. I'll be by tomorrow to get the rest of my things. I'd prefer you not be here. You're not welcome here, he shouted, jumping to his feet. Bree stood too, clinging to his arm now, her eyes wide, not with fear, I realized, with a kind of avid fascination. She was enjoying this, the drama. Take your crap and get out. The locks will be changed tonight. Change them, I said, pulling the suitcase toward the door. I looked at Bree. Good luck. You'll need it. The unfulfilled lifestyle gets expensive. I turned the handle and let myself out. The last thing I heard before the door clicked shut was Leo's enraged roar, muffled by the thick wood. The cold Chicago air hit my face. A shocking, wonderful slap. I hailed a cab, West Loop, Huron and Racine. I told the driver. The ride was a blur of neon and streetlights. Not tears, but clarity. A sharp, crystalline clarity I hadn't felt in years. The weight was gone. The incessant, low-grade dread of his needs, his moods, his disappointments, had evaporated. He'd set me free, and he was too stupid, too self-absorbed, to even realize it. My apartment was on the 12th floor, a one-bedroom with a view of the city's western sprawl. I'd bought it 2 years ago, right after he'd torn up the first set of divorce papers. My sanctuary, my secret. The down payment had been my bonus. Every penny. Leo thought it had gone into a long-term growth fund he couldn't access. I had paid the mortgage from an account he didn't know existed. I dropped the suitcases in the hallway, toed off my heels, and went straight to the kitchen, pouring a generous measure of bourbon into a clean glass. No ice. I took a burning sip, then picked up my phone. She answered on the second ring. Silly, you never call this early. Everything okay? The voice of my older sister, Kelly, was instant comfort, laced with immediate concern. Better than okay, I said, and the relief in my own voice surprised me. I carried the drink to my small balcony, sliding the door open to let in the city's rumble. He did it. He finally pulled the trigger. A beat of silence. Leo, did what? Kicked me out. Formally. In front of his new, whatever she is. Bree. Wants a divorce. Packed my bags and everything. Very dramatic. Oh, my God. Callie breathed. Then, are you at the apartment? Your apartment? Yes. And you're okay? The question was careful. She knew the history, the threats, the manipulation, the 2 years of limbo after I'd first gotten the courage to leave. Callie, I searched for the word. I am elated. I am free. He stood there in that museum of an apartment with his prop, and he gave me a gift, the only decent one he's ever given me. I could hear the smile in her voice. No hysterics, no begging him to reconsider for old time's sake. I told him I regretted not charging him rent. I took another sip, the warmth spreading through my chest. I think he might have had an aneurysm. Callie's laugh was a sharp, joyful bark. Good for you. Seriously, the bastard's been a millstone around your neck for years. I never understood why you stayed after the first time. I know. I interrupted, not wanting to rehash the ancient history of his first affair. I know. I was tired, and he made it so difficult. The threats to go to my firm, the showing up everywhere, the constant calls. It was easier, in the moment, to just stop rocking the boat, to let the marriage exist in name only while I built an exit ramp he couldn't block. I looked out at the grid of lights. I just never thought he'd be the one to drive me down it. So, what now? She asked, practical as ever. Now, I get a lawyer, a shark, not the nice guy I used last time. I go back tomorrow when he's at his important open house and get the rest of my things. The important things. Then I let the shark loose. He wants a divorce? He's going to get the fastest, most brutal divorce Cook County can process. I want my name off everything. I want my grandmother's china. I want my standing mixer. Damn it. And I want a formal accounting of every cent he's borrowed over the last 5 years. I might not get it back, but I want it on paper. Atta girl. Kelly said, you sound like yourself again. The Sealy who took on the Anderson account and made those smug Harvard boys cry. That was a good day. I mused, finishing the bourbon. We talked for another 20 minutes, dissecting the scene. Mocking Bree's dress, Kelly insisted it was 100% rented, and planning my legal strategy. It was the easiest conversation I'd had in months. After I hung up, I ran a bath, pouring in an obscene amount of expensive oil I'd been saving for a special occasion. This qualified. I sank into the scalding water, the silence of my own space of physical pleasure. My mind, freed from the day's drama, began to do what it did best. Plan, organize, optimize. Step 1. Retrieval, tomorrow, 10 a.m. Leo had a high-profile listing presentation in the Gold Coast. He'd be gone by 9. Preening. I'd have at least 2 hours. I'd take the small filing cabinet with all my personal documents, my laptop backups, my good knives, the signed first edition of the bell jar from college, the rest of the furniture, the art, the ludicrous Italian sofa. He could have it. It was all bought with debt and pretense anyway. Step 2. Counsel. I mentally reviewed the list of divorce attorneys my network had discreetly suggested. Not the collaborative type. I needed a gladiator. Step 3. Dissolution. Fast, clean. Surgical. I'd give him the apartment if it meant a cleaner break. The equity was mostly my money anyway. A sunk cost. I wanted my freedom more than I wanted to win. As the water cooled around me, I felt it. Not happiness. Not yet. That would come. What I felt was a profound, settling peace. The peace of a problem, finally, definitively, moving toward a solution. The numbers, at last, were adding up. The liability was being removed from the books. I closed my eyes. Tomorrow, I would clean up the last of the mess. And then, I would begin. The key turned in the lock with a smooth, familiar click. No resistance. Leo, in his triumphant haste, had forgotten about the spare key, the one hidden in the faux rock by the service entrance that he'd always dismissed as a security risk. I'd remembered it as I'd sipped my coffee that morning, a tiny flare of petty satisfaction cutting through my purposeful focus. My satisfaction was short-lived. The smell hit me first, stronger and more offensive in the harsh morning light. It wasn't just Bree's cloying perfume anymore. It was layered over with the stale, sweet stench of cheap champagne, the greasy aftermath of takeout, and something sharper, earthier that weed. The pristine, magazine-ready living room was a disaster zone. 2 empty moat bottles lay abandoned on the rug Leo had once fretted over if a single drop of water touched it. Chinese food containers were scattered on the marble coffee table, slick with congealed red oil. A high-heeled shoe, not mine, was stranded under the dining table. The air felt thick, debauched. So much for Leo's sensitive stomach and his carefully curated image of a sophisticated broker. This was a frat house after finals. A wave of pure, unadulterated disgust washed over me. Not jealousy, revulsion. This was the man who'd lectured me on professionalism, on the importance of appearances. I felt a clean severance, a final snapping of a long frayed thread. This wasn't my home. It was a crime scene of bad taste and worse judgment. My mission was simple, surgical. I moved through the wreckage with the silent efficiency of a ghost. My targets were specific, prioritized. The fireproof lockbox from the back of my old closet with my passport, birth certificate, and the few pieces of my mother's jewelry, the external hard drives from my office nook, containing a decade of personal photos and financial backups Leo had never bothered to understand, my professional-grade tablet, and stylus from the desk. I packed them into a sturdy tote bag I'd brought. The last items were sentimental, and thus the most important to retrieve without a fight. From the guest bedroom closet where I'd been banishing my own things for years, I pulled out a small, unassuming cardboard box. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, was the porcelain dove figurine my grandmother had brought from Shanghai, its wingtip chipped from my childhood hands. A framed, fading photo of my father teaching a 10-year-old me to sail on Lake Michigan. The first edition Plath, its spine cracked with love. These were the anchors to a self Leo had never met, or had deliberately chosen to ignore. I placed them gently in the tote. I was done. I'd been inside for less than 20 minutes. I took one last look around the living room, a final mental snapshot of the gaudy prison it had become. Goodbye to the uncomfortable couch. Goodbye to the soulless abstract art. Goodbye to the ghost of a marriage that had died long before the locks were changed. I was turning to leave when I heard it. A voice, not Leo's, a woman's voice, coming not from the master bedroom, but from the direction of the den down the hall. Bree's voice, but stripped of the honeyed, placating drawl she'd used yesterday. This voice was lower, flatter, edged with a cold, analytical precision that felt jarringly out of place amidst the post-party detritus. No, he's finally gone. Took a shower that lasted an hour, used enough cologne to fumigate a small country, and left for his big presentation. A pause. I froze, my hand tightening on the tote's handle. Yeah, I know. The ego on this guy. Thinks he's Don Draper. Looks like a used car salesman who discovered hair gel. My breath caught. This wasn't the adoring mistress. This was someone doing an impression, and a brutally accurate one at that. Instinct, older and wiser than curiosity, screamed at me to leave, but my feet were rooted. A darker, hungrier instinct, the one that had dissected failing companies and smelled blood in the water that took over. I set the tote down silently and edged closer to the den door, which was open just a crack. A male voice answered, tinny through a speakerphone. The presentation's a cover. He's meeting Victor's guy at the Valon at 11. Another consultation. The man's voice was calm, educated, with a slight, unplaceable accent. Did you get a look at the files on his laptop last night after he passed out? I pressed a hand to my mouth. Victor's guy, Leo's main business partner, was a loudmouth named Greg from the North Shore. Victor sounded Eastern European, ominous. Bree laughed, a dry, humorless sound. Please, the password was Ferrari 2025. The man's a cliche with a pulse. I cloned the drive in 15 minutes. You're not going to believe the shit I found. Zach, this isn't just some 2-bit broker skimming commissions. My blood ran cold. Zach, who is Zach? Go on. Zach's voice prompted. All business. Okay, so the real estate stuff is mostly standard issue sleaze. Inflated comps. Hiding foundation issues from out-of-town buyers. The usual, but that's just the cover. He's got a whole other set of books. Offshore. Caymans. A shell company called Midas Holdings that's funneling money through a gallery in River North. He's not just selling overpriced condos to idiots. Zach, he's washing it. A lot off it. The floor seemed to tilt under me. I leaned against the wall for support. The cool plaster a shock against my skin. Washing it, illegal wealth, hidden money. All while he'd been, my mind raced, tumbling back over the years. The temporary cash flow problems when his commission checks were delayed. The once-in-a-lifetime investment opportunity in a Wyoming oil field that vaporized $25,000 of my bonus. The constant, grating refrain about the financial pressure of maintaining our lifestyle. A lifestyle I never asked for but was constantly funding. The tears in his eyes when he'd asked for a loan to cover his mother's fictitious medical bills. A cold, hard knot of fury formed in my stomach. So intense it was nauseating. How much are we talking? Zach asked. I could hear the tapping of keys in the background. From what I've pieced together, the active, liquid pools? Maybe 2.5 mil. And that's just what's moving. There's property at a warehouse in Pilsen under the shell company, probably holding inventory. And there's more tied up in what looks like art, high value, portable stuff. This guy isn't just a cheating asshole. Zach, he's a full-blown, small-time criminal with a surprisingly big pot of gold. 2.5 million. The number echoed in the hollow space he'd carved in my life. I'd been scrimping, budgeting, feeling guilty for buying a new coat, while he had millions stashed away. The fury turned white-hot, a silent scream in my veins. And the wife? Zach's question was casual, clinical, silly. Bree's tone shifted, became appraising. She's an interesting variable, clean as a whistle. From what I saw, her finances are almost completely separate. A couple of joint accounts he's been milking dry, but her real money, her salary, her investments, are locked down tight. He's got a folder of her statements. You know, like he's been studying her. Studying her for what? To bleed her. Looks like there are notes. Bonus, due Q4. For a 1K vesting schedule. He's been siphoning money from her for years. Sob stories about bad investments. Debts. Business loans that never get repaid. It's systematic. She's probably another one of his victims. Just the legal kind. Hearing it laid out so bluntly by a stranger was like being struck. It wasn't a suspicion anymore. It was a confirmed, itemized indictment. Every loan, every guilt trip, every performance of financial anxiety had been a calculated extraction. I was a mark, a profitable, low-maintenance revenue stream. Even better, Bree continued, and I could almost hear the cruel smile in her voice. Means she's got motive, and he won't suspect her of knowing anything about his dirty deals. As far as Leo's concerned, she's the frigid ex who's too busy with her spreadsheets to notice the real world. The insult barely registered. My brain, trained for high-stakes analysis, was already leaping ahead, connecting the jagged pieces. Bree and Zach, they weren't lovers. They were partners, con artists. And Leo, with his secret fortune and towering ego, was their mark. The irony was so perfect it was poetic. Our play, Zach asked. We stick to the script, but we accelerate, Bree said, her voice hardening. The Uncle Maurice with the distressed European art portfolio is perfect. Leo's greedy, and he's vain. He wants to be more than a broker. He wants to be a player, a connoisseur. We feed him a story about a cache of pre-war paintings, discovered in a Zurich vault, being quietly offloaded by a desperate heir. He gets to be the savvy insider. We get his liquid cash. The documentation is ready. The provenance histories are works of art themselves. Zach said, a hint of pride in his voice. The online gallery is live. I've even got a Swiss banker avatar ready for a video call if he gets skittish. Good. I'll start laying the groundwork tonight. Oh, Leo, I was on the phone with my uncle. He mentioned this incredible opportunity. But it's so secretive. I shouldn't even be telling you. He'll be salivating. They continued, discussing transfer methods, safe accounts, timelines. It was a sophisticated, ruthless operation, and it was going to happen in my former living room. To the man who had just thrown me out of it, the initial shock had burned away, leaving behind something crystalline and sharp. A plan, a dangerous, insane, utterly perfect plan. They wanted his dirty money. I wanted my money back. Every penny, with interest. Our objectives were not mutually exclusive. They were complementary. I didn't wait for them to finish. I didn't slink away. The fear was gone, incinerated by a colder, more potent fuel, a sense of absolute, righteous calculation. I picked up my tote bag, squared my shoulders, and pushed the den door open. The scene was domestic, almost banal. Bree was perched on the edge of Leo's ugly modernist desk, wearing one of his dress shirts and nothing else. Her long legs crossed. A sleek laptop was open in front of her. Zach's face a sharp, intelligent, wary dot visible on the screen. A cigarette smoldered in a saucer she was using as an ashtray. Both of them froze as I entered. Two predators caught in mid-pounce. Bree's eyes widened, the color draining from her face for a second before a mask of cool composure slammed down. On the screen, Zach's expression went utterly still, his eyes narrowing to assessing slits. The silence stretched, thick and electric. I let it. I took a step into the room, my gaze moving from Bree to the face on the laptop. Before you, to con my soon-to-be ex-husband out of every dirty penny he has, I said, my voice steady, calm, the voice I used in boardrooms when presenting a hostile takeover defense. I believe we need to talk about my finder's fee. I paused, letting the words hang. Or rather, my reimbursement. Bree recovered first. A slow, dangerous smile spread across her lips, utterly devoid of its previous saccharine warmth. Well, the frigid X is full of surprises. How much of that did you hear? Enough, I said. Enough to know that Uncle Maurice is about to make an appearance. Enough to know that Leo has approximately $2.5 million in illicit funds that he's hidden from everyone, including the IRS. And enough to know that you, I nodded at the screen, Zach, I presume, have fabricated a rather convincing Swiss art gallery. Zach's voice came from the laptop speakers, cool and measured. And what, exactly, do you think you're going to do with that information? Silly, run to Leo, warn him his precious Bree isn't who she seems? He won't believe you. You're the bitter ex-wife. The thought never crossed my mind. I said, placing my tote bag deliberately on a chair. Warning Leo would be counterproductive. I don't want him safe. I want him broke. I want him in a world of hurt. And it sounds like you're the people who can make that happen. Bree's gaze was locked on me. Calculating. Reimbursement. You want your money back. Every cent. With a significant risk-adjusted premium. He's taken over $200,000 from me over the past 5 years under false pretenses. I have the bank transfers. I have the emails where he begged. I have the records. I want $250,000. Call it interest. Call it pain and suffering. I don't care. Zach let out a low whistle. That's a steep finder's fee for just standing in a hallway. I'm not just standing in a hallway. I countered, taking another step forward. I addressed Bree. You have the financial data. Zach has the technical skills. But you don't have him. You don't know what makes him tick. What his tells are when he's lying. What his real vulnerabilities are. You know he's greedy. I know he's insecure about his greed. He needs to feel like the smartest guy in the room. You can give him a fake art deal. But I can tell you the exact language to use to make him believe he thought of it first. I know which of his business associates are real and which are just fronts for his ego. I know where he hides the physical keys, the ones not on any encrypted drive. I was bluffing on the last part, but it landed. Bree and Zach exchanged a look, a silent conversation passing in the space of a heartbeat. You're proposing a partnership, Bree stated, a temporary, goal-oriented alliance. I corrected. You get the lion's share of his illegal hoard. I get back what's morally and legally mine. With interest, and we all get to watch that bastard get exactly what he deserves. A triple win. And what's to stop you from taking our plan and using it for yourself? Zach asked, his digital eyes boring into me. Ambition and capability. I said flatly, I'm a financial analyst, not a con artist. I don't have the skills or the stomach to run a long-game fraud. More importantly, I don't have the time. I want a clean, fast, surgical divorce. Dragging this out in some solo revenge fantasy doesn't serve me. You too are professionals. This is what you do. I'm offering you insider intelligence to make your job cleaner, safer, and more profitable. My cut comes off the top, before you even start moving the money. It's a cost of doing business, a relatively small one, given the total pot. The room was silent again, save for the faint hum of the laptop. Bree studied me, her head tilted. The Southern Belle was completely gone, replaced by a sharp, predatory intelligence. You're not what I expected, she said finally. Neither are you. I replied. So, do we have an understanding? Or do I walk out of here and let you two try to fleece Leo Vance on your own? Good luck. By the way, he's dumber than he looks, but he's also a paranoid, corner-cutting weasel. Without someone who knows where the corners are, you might get bitten. Bree looked at Zach on the screen. He gave an almost imperceptible nod. She turned back to me, that cold smile returning. She uncrossed her legs and stood, extending a hand, not the limp, polite gesture of yesterday, but a firm, business-like offer. Welcome to the team. Silly. Temporarily, I took her hand. Her grip was strong, dry, and very, very cold. Let's get to work, I said. My apartment in the West Loop had never felt more like a command center, and less like a home. The quiet, minimalist space I'd curated for peace now hummed with a tense, illicit energy. Bree and Zach were in my living room, and the contrast was jarring. Bree, curled in the Eames chair I'd splurged on, looked like she belonged in a fashion shoot, all effortless angles and calculated nonchalance. Zach, on my sofa with 3 laptops open on the coffee table before him, was a study in focused intensity, his fingers a blur on the keyboards. I stood by the kitchen island, the marble cool under my palms, feeling like a stranger in my own sanctuary. This was the price of admission. All right, Zach said, not looking up from a screen, scrolling with lines of code. Ground rules. This is a business arrangement, not a slumber party. We communicate through encrypted channels only. Signal for calls, Wicker for messages, burner phones for anything related to the op. No real names, no personal details. You call me Z. She's B. You're S. We clear? His voice was all business, stripped of the wary assessment from yesterday. This was him in his element. The technician, the planner. I nodded. Clear. I've already downloaded the apps. Bree. Deputat took a slow sip of the water I'd given her. Our objective is the capital. Your objective is a reimbursement. We overlap, but we're not the same. We move on our timeline. You follow our lead. You're the consultant, not the CEO. Understood, I said, matching her detached tone. But as a consultant, I need a full assessment of the assets to calculate my fee and to provide useful intelligence. What exactly are we dealing with? Zach glanced at Bree, who gave a slight nod. He turned one of the laptops toward me. On the screen was a mind map, terrifying in its complexity. Leo's name was at the center, with lines radiating to various nodes. Vance Realty, front. Midas Holdings, LLC, Caymans. Artemis Gallery, River North. Pilsen Warehouse, Unit 7B. And a list of numbered Swiss and Singaporean bank accounts. Your soon-to-be ex-husband, Zach began, his voice dry, is a moderately sophisticated financial cockroach. His legitimate business is a shell. Maybe 30% of his income comes from actual commissions. The rest, he clicked, and a cascade of documents filled the screen. Falsified appraisal reports, invoices for art restoration that was never done, wire transfer records between anonymous entities. He's a laundry service, mostly for a network associated with a guy named Viktor Malinov. Russian, operates out of Brighton Park. Construction, waste management, the usual. Leo's role is to take Victor's excess liquidity and run it through inflated real estate deals or his new favorite, the art market. Bree picked up the narrative. The gallery is perfect. He buys a piece of junk for 10 grand, has a complicit expert issue a certificate valuing it at $500,000, sells it to a shell company funded by Victor's money. And voila, clean money, a hefty fee for Leo, and a valuable asset on someone's books. It was so blatant, so reckless, and I'd had no idea. The anger was a cold, hard stone in my gut. How much has he moved? In the last 18 months, we've traced at least 4 million through the gallery alone. Zach said, the active, liquid funds in the offshore accounts are around 2.3 mil. Like I said, the warehouse is the wild card. We think it's holding the physical art that's part of the scam cycle, or maybe other commodities. We need eyes on it. I processed this. The scale was larger than I'd imagined. My $250,000 was a rounding error to them. Good. It made me less of a threat. And the personal drain? On me? Zach opened another file. It was a spreadsheet, chilling in its clarity. Dates, amounts, reasons pulled from my own email archives. Loan for property tax shortfall, $12,000. Investment in sustainable fisheries venture, $18,500. Mom's medical deductible, $8,000 to the running total at the bottom, $214.700. He kept records. I said, my voice hollow, of his own grift. People like him are often proud of their conquests. Bree said, her eyes on me, even the ones they can't tell anyone about. It's a ledger to them, proof of their cleverness. I looked away from the screen, focusing on the two of them. What's the play? You mentioned an Uncle Maurice. An art deal. The classic distressed asset scam. Bree said, a predatory gleam in her eye. I'm the well-connected niece. My uncle is a reclusive Belgian collector with a cache of pre-war expressionist works. Kirchner. Heckel. Acquired before the war. Lost. Recently rediscovered in a Zurich vault. Due to delicate provenance issues, he needs to move them, quietly, below market. Leo gets to be the savvy insider who bridges the gap between a secretive seller and a discreet buyer will also provide. He fronts the money to secure the pieces. They get authenticated and transferred, and then poof, the buyer vanishes. The art never existed. And Leo is left holding a digital receipt for a wire transfer to a numbered account in Liechtenstein that's already empty. He'll want verification. Third-party verification. I said, my analyst's mind kicking in, assessing the plan's weak points. We have a verifier. Zach said, a retired professor from the Art Institute, deeply in debt from a gambling habit. He'll provide a conditional certificate for a fee. Based on flawless forgeries we provide, the certificate itself will be a masterpiece. It's good. I conceded, but it's a one-shot. He's paranoid. He'll only risk so much on a single transaction, no matter how greedy he is. You'll get maybe $500,000, maybe $1 million if you're lucky. Not the full 2.3. Bree's smile was sharp, which is where you come in. Consultant. The art deal is the hook, the proof of concept. Once he gets a taste of easy money from my world, he'll be hungry for more. You're going to help us find the other hooks, the personal pressures, the hidden levers, the things that will make him desperate to move aloft his money. And quickly, they were thinking bigger than I'd realized. This wasn't just a scam, it was a systematic liquidation. What do you need from me? 3 things, Zach said, ticking them off on his fingers. 1. Physical intel. The laptop clone is great, but he's old school in some ways. He keeps a notebook, leather-bound, black. I saw it in a drawer in his home office desk in the photos, but it wasn't in the desk when Bree did her sweep. He's moved it. It's not on any cloud backup. Find it. It could have account numbers, combinations, contacts that aren't digitized. 2. Bree continued. Psychological profile. We need his pressure points, not just greed, fear, insecurity, pride. What makes him panic? What makes him feel invincible? You lived with him. You know. And 3? I asked. 3 is the warehouse. Zach said, we need to know what's in Unit 7B. Is it just paintings? Is it something else? The deed for the unit is under Midas Holdings, but the access log is a standalone, offline system. We need the physical key, or the code. You're the only one who can get back into that apartment without raising alarms. He hasn't changed the locks yet. His ego won't let him believe you'd dare come back. The assignment was clear. Terrifying, but clear. I was to be the ground asset, the inside woman. Even though I was officially outside, the irony was thick enough to taste. He has a presentation today. A luxury loft in the Tribune Tower. It'll last at least 3 hours with the client schmoozing afterwards. I said, I'll go back this afternoon. No, Bree said sharply. He might skip out early, or the client might cancel. You go when he's guaranteed to be occupied and distant. You said he has the big Gold Coast listing presentation tomorrow, the one with the Saudi investors. That's a full-day affair, starting with a breakfast meeting at the peninsula. He won't leave. That's your window. She was right. The professional in me acknowledged it, even as the part of me that was still just silly, the wronged wife, recoiled at the delay. Tomorrow, then, we'll need a way to communicate in real time, Zach said, pulling a small, cheap-looking phone from his bag. Burner, my number, B's number, and a secure messaging app are preloaded. We'll be listening. If anything goes sideways, you say the word snowbird and we abort. You're on your own. And we vanish. Understood? I took the phone. It felt heavy. Alien. Understood. Good, Bree said, standing up. She smoothed her dress, the Southern Belle persona sliding back into place like a mask. Now, I have to go shopping. Leo's taking me to RPM steak tonight. I need to look expensive and impressed. Remember, silly, this only works if he stays focused on me, on the prize I'm dangling. You're the ghost in the machine. Don't become a poltergeist. After they left, the silence in the apartment felt different, charged. I spent the evening in a fever of preparation. I dressed in dark, nondescript joggers and a hoodie. I charged the burner phone. I mapped the quickest route from Leo's building to the nearest L station. And I thought about the black leather notebook. He'd shown it to me once, years ago, when he was pretending to be a serious businessman. My little black book, he'd joked. Contacts, ideas, the secret sauce that he'd kept it in his top desk drawer then. Where would he move it? Then I remembered. After the first time I'd asked for a divorce, he'd become paranoid about me snooping. He'd had a small, biometric safe installed in the back of his walk-in closet, behind a row of suits. He'd bragged about it, a pathetic attempt to project an image of having things worth protecting. Important documents, he'd said. The notebook would be there. The next day, as the city stirred under a leaden gray sky, I was a coiled spring. At 9:05 a.m., the tracker app Zach had briefly pinged on Leo's phone, a move that made my skin crawl. But I'd consented, showed him entering the Peninsula Hotel. The window was open. I let myself in. The apartment was still a mess. Though someone Bree, certainly not Leo, had made an effort to pile the trash together. The smell had faded to a stale miasma. I ignored it, beelining for the master bedroom. The walk-in closet was a monument to his vanity. Rows of tailored suits, shelves of Italian leather shoes, drawers of silk ties. I pushed aside the heavy wool and cashmere, revealing the gray metal face of the wall safe. A keypad and a fingerprint scanner. My heart sank. A fingerprint scanner. This was it. My part in this insane venture was over before it began. Think, silly that he was vain, not overly clever. He'd choose a code he could remember easily, something that flattered his ego. I tried his birthday. Access denied. His standard password. Ferrari, 2025. Denied. The date he'd made his first big commission. Denied. I was about to say snowbird into the burner phone in my pocket when I stopped. He was sentimental in the most toxic way. He loved symbols of his own perceived success. What was the one date he never forgot? The one he expected me to never forget, even as he erased its meaning with every affair. Our wedding anniversary, with a sense of profound disgust. I typed in the digits. 101512, October 15th, 2012. A soft green light blinked. A quiet click. I nearly laughed. Of course, the ultimate trophy. The day he'd won me. I turned the handle and pulled the door open. Inside were bundles of cash, euros, and Swiss francs. Not dollars. A few passports, point one for him. One in a different name. And there, next to a velvet box that likely held the diamond studs he'd told me he'd lost, was the black leather notebook. I grabbed it, along with a small, unmarked key on a fob that was with the passports. I didn't touch the cash. I took photos of the safe's interior, the passports, everything. Then I closed it, hearing the lock engage, and rearranged the suits, back in the living room, my hands trembling slightly from adrenaline. I opened the notebook. It was worse than I'd imagined. Not just account numbers and codes, though those were there, in a crude cipher, but notes. Victor, delivery 5 units to Pilsen, 750K. 15% fee, gallery valuation for lot number 23. Inflate by 300%, and, chillingly, notes on people. Elderly seller, dementia, push for quick close, lowball, air in Florida, greedy, next to one entry. Simply, done. No issues. The date was 2 weeks before a news story about a retired teacher in Logan Square who died suddenly. Her house sold in a whirlwind deal to an LLC. This wasn't just greed. This was predation. This was evil. I was taking pictures of every page when I heard the key in the lock. My blood froze. The tracker. It had been wrong. Or he'd left his phone somewhere. I shoved the notebook and the key into the large inner pocket of my hoodie, slammed the closet door shut, and looked around wildly. The front door was opening. There was no time for the front door. I ducked into the hallway bathroom, locking the door just as I heard his voice, loud and annoyed on the phone. No, I told Victor, the timing is bad. The Saudis are dragging their feet. I know. Next week, I'll have the shipment verified. Just tell him to keep his pants on. He was in the living room. I stood in the pitch-dark bathroom, barely breathing. I could hear him pacing, pouring a drink, cursing. Think, the bathroom had a small window. It led to a narrow service ledge, and from there to the building's fire escape. It was 12 stories up. The wind whistled outside. It was madness, but staying was worse. If he found me here, with the notebook, everything would be over. I slid the window open as silently as I could. A blast of icy Chicago wind tore into the small room. I looked down. Dizziness swarmed me. Don't look down. I climbed out onto the ledge, my back pressed to the cold brick. The fire escape was 5 feet to my left, an impossible gap over a sheer drop. I inched sideways, my fingers clawing at the brick. The wind tugged at my clothes. I could hear Leo's muffled voice from inside. Getting closer. Was he coming to the bathroom? With a final, desperate push, I lunged for the rusty railing of the fire escape. My hand connected, slipped, then gripped. I hauled myself onto the grating, the metal clanging softly under my weight. I froze, listening. Nothing. He hadn't heard. I scrambled down the 12 flights of shaking metal stairs, my heart hammering against my ribs. When I hit the alley, I ran, not stopping until I was 3 blocks away, slumped in a bus shelter, gasping for air, the cold metal of the fire escape railing still imprinted on my palm. That's when the burner phone buzzed. A message from Zach. Status. My fingers, stiff with cold, fumbled a reply. Got it. And a key. Almost caught. He's home. Get clear. Safe house. Now, he texted an address in Bucktown. An hour later, I was in a sparse, clean condo that smelled of new paint and electronics. Bree and Zach were already there. The notebooks and the key laid out on a table under a bright lamp. You're sure he didn't see you? Bree asked, her eyes scanning the photos I'd taken. No, he was on the phone, arguing with someone named Victor about a shipment. He was home because a meeting with Saudi investors fell through. Zach was already deciphering the notebook's code. It's simple substitution. Child's play. This is everything. Account access codes, wire instructions, the warehouse alarm code, and the key. The key is for a safety deposit box at First Lakeshore Bank, under the name Leo Vance, but with a different signature card. Clever. Bree looked up from the notebook, her face grim. This elderly seller note. The date. I know that case. It was in the Tribune. She died of a heart attack 2 days after signing a quitclaim deed for a fraction of the value. The heir contested, but the sale was airtight. Leo brokered it. The room felt colder. This was no longer about my stolen money, or even about taking Leo's dirty cash. He was a parasite who left broken lives in his wake. We're not just conning him anymore. I said, my voice quiet but firm. We're exposing him. We're burning it all down. Zach nodded slowly. The game just changed. The art deal is phase 1. It gets us the liquid cash and his absolute trust. Phase 2, we use what's in that warehouse and that safety deposit box. We use it to make his partners very, very nervous. We make the authorities very, very interested. And we make sure, I said, the final piece of my own resolve clicking into place, that when he falls, he has nowhere to land, no money, no friends, and a very long time to think about it in a very small cell. My own revenge had just become something bigger, something darker, and something infinitely more satisfying. The ledger wasn't just a book of numbers. It was a book of sins, and we were going to make him read from it, line by damning line. The safe house in Bucktown became our war room. The air, once smelling of new paint, now carried the sharp scent of cold coffee, ozone from overheating electronics, and a low, constant hum of tension. We were no longer just 3 people with aligned grudges. We were a startup in the most illicit sense, and our MVP was the systematic destruction of Leo Vance. Zach had transformed the dining table into a command center. The stolen notebook, now fully decrypted, was cross-referenced on multiple screens with financial records, property deeds, and a complex timeline of the operation. Bree, meanwhile, was in the next room, running lines. I could hear the cadence of her voice shifting, practicing. One moment, the breathy, adoring mistress for Leo. The next, the cool, strategic partner for us. Her ability to compartmentalize was terrifying. My role was that of intelligence analyst and behavioral consultant. I pored over the decrypted notes, cross-referencing them with my own memories. Here, I said, pointing to a screen showing a series of transactions labeled Ether Holdings. These payments to the gallery are always 2 days after notes that just say Victor, delivery. The amounts correspond roughly to 15% of round numbers, 0.750K. 500K, it's his fee. The delivery is the dirty cash arriving. The gallery purchase is the wash. Zach nodded, typing furiously. And the warehouse is the holding pen. The art, or whatever the collateral is, sits there until the wash is complete. Then it's moved or sold again to another shell. It's a closed loop. We need to pop it open. We will, Bree said, gliding into the room. She was dressed down in yoga pants and a tank top, her hair in a messy bun, a stark contrast to the glamorous persona she'd soon adopt. But first, we need his undivided attention and trust. The art deal is the bait. Silly, talk to me about his ego. How do we make this the most irresistible thing he's ever heard? I leaned back, closing my eyes, picturing Leo in his element. He doesn't just want to be rich. He wants to be seen as rich, as cultured, as a player who operates in worlds other people only read about. He resents the old money families in Lake Forest who look down on him as a salesman. This can't just be a good investment. It has to be a validation. Bree's eyes lit up. So we don't sell him on the profit margin first. We sell him on the exclusivity, the secret history. Exactly, I said. Mention a name, a Rothschild, a Getty. Imply, never state, that this cash was once pursued by them. That Uncle Maurice is choosing him because he's discreet, because he's not part of the stuffy, leaking gossip mill of the established art world. Flatter his sense of being an outsider who's smarter than the insiders. That's good, Bree murmured, making a note on her own phone. I'll layer that in. The first mention will be casual, an anecdote over dinner. The plan, dubbed Project Aquarelle, moved into execution. My part was largely passive now, a source of information and a sounding board, which left me too much time to think, to doubt. The sheer illegality of it was a constant, cold knot in my stomach. I was an accomplice to fraud, conspiracy, likely worse. I justified it with the ledger, with the image of the elderly woman's name in Leo's notes. But in the quiet moments, the fear was a palpable thing. A few days later, Bree initiated Phase 1. We listened via a patch into the burner phone she carried, a tiny, live-streamed audio feed to the safe house. We heard the clink of wine glasses, the murmur of a crowded, expensive restaurant, RPM steak, and then Uncle Maurice said the most heartbreaking thing. Bree's voice came through, perfectly pitched with a wistful sadness. He said, "My dear, these pieces, they have been hidden away, witnesses to so much tragedy. They deserve to be seen again by someone who appreciates their spirit, not just their provenance. He's so old world. Leo, he thinks the whole Sotheby's and Christie's circus is vulgar." Leo's voice, slightly slurred with good wine and vanity. He's not wrong. It's all a show, a game for hedge fund managers to park money. Exactly. Bree's enthusiasm was a masterclass. He wants them to go to a connoisseur, someone with a deliberate pause. And I, not just a wallet. He mentioned you. You know, after I told him about you, about your sense for beautiful things, for value that others miss. He did. Leo's voice puffed up, audible even through the tinny speaker. I showed him a picture of your apartment, the Kandinsky print. He said, he has a feeling for the expressionists. Instinctive. Leo didn't own a Kandinsky. It was a cheap reproduction. He'd probably told her it was an original sketch. Bree was feeding his own lies back to him, and he was swallowing them whole. Your uncle sounds like a very discerning man, Leo said, trying to sound modest and failing utterly. He is, and he's in a difficult position. There are inheritance disputes, tax complications in the EU. He needs to move these 6 pieces quietly and quickly. He's already turned down offers from 2 major foundations because he doesn't want the publicity. He wants a private sale, a single, discreet transaction. The hook was set. We could hear the gears turning in Leo's head. Discreet, quick, no publicity. It was the language of his own shadow world. How quick? Leo asked, his voice dropping. All business now. Weeks, maybe a month. The pieces are in Zurich, in a private vault. He's prepared to offer them at, well, Leo, at a price that would make your head spin. 40% of their last authenticated auction valuation. Because speed and secrecy are worth more to him than a public bidding war. A sharp intake of breath from Leo. 40%? What's the total valuation? Between 12 and 15 million. Bree said softly, as if sharing a sacred secret. The silence on the line was profound, then a low whistle. So, a buy-in of 5 to 6 million for a potential profit of 8 or 9, at least, possibly more if the market shifts. Uncle Maurice has a friend, a former curator at the Kunstmuseum, who can provide a confidential authentication for a fee, of course, just for the buyer's peace of mind. Of course, of course, Leo said, his mind clearly racing, calculating his secret pools of capital. I'd need to see the documentation, the provenance, the curatorial opinion. Absolutely. I can have him send digital copies to a secure email. He's very cautious. Leo, this is his life's legacy. Back in the safe house. Zach gave a thumbs up. The hook is set. Now we reel him in slowly. I'm generating the documents now. The provenance will be bulletproof. A tragic Belgian family, lost during the war, rediscovered in a forgotten vault. The expert opinion will come from Dr. Arnaud Lefebvre, a very real, very reclusive scholar whose signature I've appropriated. Over the next week, I watched a symphony of deceit unfold. Zach's forgeries were breathtaking. High-resolution scans of actual expressionist works, subtly altered, with fake watermarks, aged paper simulations, and a chain of ownership that wove through pre-war Brussels, a nameless Swiss bank, and finally, the Maurice Vandenberg Family Trust. The accompanying essay from Dr. Lefebvre was a work of art in itself, full of academic jargon and cautious, glowing praise that stopped just short of an ironclad guarantee. Leo swallowed it. He asked questions. Of course. He had Bree set up an encrypted video call with Maurice, a stooped, elegant old man with a Belgian accent, Zach, using a real-time filter and a flawless performance, who spoke lovingly of the bold lines of Kirchner and his desire to see them in a new world home. It was the final piece. Leo needed to feel he was dealing with a person, not a scheme. He committed $2 million from a Cayman Islands account to be transferred to a legal escrow agent in Zurich, another of Zach's creations, as a good faith deposit to secure exclusive purchasing rights for the lot. The night before the transfer, the tension in the safe house was a live wire. This was the first real move. If Leo got spooked, if the bank raised a flag, it was over. And then Zach's monitoring system pinged. A red alert. He's running a background check. Zach said, his voice tight, not the usual credit crap. He's hired someone, a PI named Frank Rollins, bottom feeder, but persistent. He's digging into Bree. A cold fist clenched in my chest. This was the crisis point, the moment the fragile house of cards could collapse. Bree, to her credit, didn't flinch. She was in character. At Leo's apartment. How deep? Rollins has filed requests for birth records in Atlanta, where your cover story says you're from. He's looking for marriage licenses, property deeds. The basic shell will hold that I built a deep dot, but if he gets lucky, if he finds a photograph of the real Bree Summers from Georgia, who died in 2009, we need to control the narrative. I said, the solution presenting itself with cold clarity. It was a risk, but the only one. We feed him. We give Rollins a story, a better one. They both looked at me. Explain. Zach said, right now, he's looking for inconsistencies. For proof you're a fraud. We give him an inconsistency that explains everything. We let him discover that Bree isn't just a trust fund baby. She's a woman with a past. Bree's eyes narrowed, then gleamed with understanding. A scandal. Exactly. Something juicy enough to be the reason a wealthy, connected woman is hooking up with a mid-level real estate broker in Chicago. Something that makes her need discretion. And cash. As much as he does, it makes you more real, not less. And it makes you vulnerable, which he'll love. Zach was already typing. What's the play? An ex-husband. I said, A messy, expensive divorce from a tech billionaire in Seattle. Confidential settlement, but rumors of, I don't know, embarrassing personal details. She changed her name back, fled the gossip, and is lying low, rebuilding her life with her inheritance. The Uncle Maurice story still holds that he's her real uncle, shielding her. But her need for quick, quiet money is personal, not just about art. It's brilliant. Bree breathed. It makes me a tragic heroine, and it gives Leo a sense of power. He's not just her mark, he's her savior, her partner in redemption. We need evidence. Zach said, social media traces from Seattle, a sealed court case, a few planted, leaked documents in the right places. Do it, Bree said, and make sure Rollins finds it. Not easily. He has to earn it. Zach worked through the night. By morning, a digital ghost had been born, Brianna Lodge, who married tech wunderkind Elias Thorne in 2021, divorced in a storm of scandal in 2023, and reemerged as Bree Summers with a new social security number and a bitter distrust of the spotlight. A few grainy paparazzi photos, Zach's face swap magic, a whisper-thin article in a Seattle gossip blog, and a deliberately leaked divorce docket summary that hinted at substance abuse and infidelity on Elias's part. Of course, we're seeded into the corners of the internet where a man like Frank Rollins would dig. 2 days later, Zach intercepted Rollins's preliminary report to Leo. It was a masterpiece of innuendo and half-truth. Subject: Summers. Bree, aka Brianna Lodge. Findings inconclusive, but suggestive. Primary records obscured. Likely following a legal name change post-divorce. Association with Elias Thorne, Thorne Dynamics, confirmed via archived social traces. Divorce proceedings in King County were sealed, but sources indicate a substantial, confidential settlement for the subject. Current financials opaque, but lifestyle suggests independent wealth. Connection to Maurice Vandenberg, Belgian national, corroborated via limited public records. No criminal history. Assessment: subject is likely who she claims, with a motivated desire for privacy and liquidity. The art deal merits standard financial due diligence, but subject's background, while messy, does not suggest fraud. Leo called Bree immediately. We listened in. Sweetheart, he said, his voice oozing anew, patronizing sympathy. You should have told me. A perfectly timed catch in Bree's breath. Told you what? Leo. About Seattle. About everything. I had to be careful. You understand. In my position. Oh, God. Her voice was a shattered whisper. He found that? That awful man. It's okay, darling. It's okay. It just makes me understand you better. Why you'd want a fresh start. A quiet deal. We're the same. You and I. We understand the value of discretion. He'd bought it. Not only had he bought it, he'd integrated the lie into his own fantasy. He was the knight. She was the damaged princess with a treasure map. It was nauseating. It was perfect. The next day, the wire transfer went through. $2 million left Leo's hidden account and disappeared into the digital labyrinth Zach had constructed. It was done. When Bree returned to the safe house that night, there was no celebration. We sat around the table, the weight of what we'd just done settling over us. We're in now. Zach said quietly, he'll want to move fast. He'll want the rest of the art, and he'll want to flip it. He's going to be digging into every cent he has. My cut, I said, the words feeling crude but necessary. The $250, off the top, before any more moves. Bree looked at me, her expression unreadable. It's safe. In a separate account Zach set up. You can have it whenever you want. But Celie, if you take it now and walk away, you're leaving a loose end. Leo might be able to trace the financial shockwave if he gets desperate enough. It was a threat, veiled as concern. They didn't fully trust me not to bolt. And if I stay? I asked. Then it's not just your reimbursement. Zach said, it's a share, a smaller percentage, but of a much larger whole. We take everything, the warehouse, the safety deposit box, the remaining accounts. We leave him with nothing but the attention of Viktor Malinov and the FBI. And you get your money, plus a bonus for seeing it through. It was a bigger gamble, higher risk, higher reward. The analyst in me ran the numbers. The moral calculus, however murky, had been settled. Leo was a predator. The woman in the ledger deserved more than just me getting my money back. I'm in, I said, but we do it my way, where it counts. We don't just take his money. We use his own lies, his own crimes, to trap him. We make the cleanup part of the con. A slow smile spread across Bree's face. It wasn't friendly. It was the smile of one predator recognizing another. Welcome to the big leagues. Silly. Now, let's talk about Phase 2. Let's talk about Victor. The web was woven, and we were no longer just the spiders. We were the architects of the entire, fragile ecosystem. And Leo, buzzing with greed and arrogance, was flying straight into the dead center. Pressure. It was the new currency of our operation, and we were manufacturing it on an industrial scale. Phase 1 had been a precision strike, a single, deep incision into Leo's hidden wealth. Phase 2 was a siege. We were going to turn his entire world, legitimate and criminal, into a pressure cooker and then hand him a match. The catalyst came not from us, but from Leo's own rotten foundations. Zach's constant monitoring of Leo's communications, a tangle of encrypted apps, burner phones, and careless emails picked up the shift first. He's got a problem, Zach announced one evening, his face illuminated by the cool glow of his screens. Bree was out, consoling Leo over the slow-moving Swiss attorneys handling the art transaction. I was reviewing the schematics for the Pilsen warehouse's security system, a big one. He's been texting a number registered to a known associate of Viktor Malinov. Panicked, rambling. About what? I asked, a familiar chill settling in my bones. Victor's name in the ledger was one thing. An active, panicked dialogue was another. A shipment. It was supposed to be verified and moved last week. It wasn't. Leo's making excuses. Logistical delays. Authenticity concerns. The replies are not friendly. Zach turned a speaker on, playing a cleaned-up audio file. It was Leo's voice, tinny with fear, left on a voicemail. Victor, please, just a few more days. The specialist from New York. His flight was canceled. I need him to sign off. You know the rules. Without the papers, it's just junk. I'm protecting the asset. Protecting your asset. Call me back. Please. A moment later, a response, automated and brutal, texted to Leo's phone. 72 hours. Papers or product. Or we collect differently. He's in the red with the wrong people. I said, this changed everything. A desperate Leo was a dangerous Leo, an unpredictable one. Bree confirmed it when she returned. The scent of Leo's cologne clinging to her like a warning. She shed her concerned lover persona the moment the door closed, her expression grim. He's on edge, like genuinely scared, not his usual performative stress. He's drinking more. He's paranoid. He grilled me for 20 minutes about Uncle Morris's lawyer, demanding direct contact info. I had to threaten to call the whole deal off. Play the wounded, you don't trust me card. It worked, but barely. She poured a stiff drink from the safe house's meager stash. He's got maybe a week's grace on the Victor situation. Tops. And it's making him reckless about our deal. He wants to move the rest of the art money now. He's talking about liquidating everything in the Cayman's account to buy the full lot. This was the opportunity. And the peril. A desperate man would take bigger risks. A desperate man could also lash out. We can't just take the money and run now, Zach said, voicing the tactical concern. If Victor's guys come for him and find him cleaned out, they'll tear the city apart looking for where it went. They'll find Bree. They'll trace the digital crumbs. We need a containment strategy. The room was quiet. The elegant fraud was morphing into something darker, more violent. I stared at the warehouse schematic, at the red dot marking Unit 7B. The key from Leo's safe burned a hole in my imagination. We don't just take his money, I said slowly, the plan crystallizing with a terrible, beautiful clarity. We give him a bigger problem. We make Victor's problem disappear. And we make Leo the architect of his own ruin. Explain, Bree said. Her eyes locked on me. The double sting. First, we use his desperation. Bree, you present the ultimate solution. Not just an art flip, a commodities play, something that requires a huge, immediate capital outlay but promises a triple return in under a month. Something so secret, so elite, that it makes the art deal look like a garage sale. He needs a massive score to pay off Victor and come out on top. We give him the golden ticket. What's the play? Zach asked, already leaning forward, his mind racing over the possibilities. Palladium, I said. The precious metal had been volatile, perfect for our fiction. There's a Canadian mining conglomerate, privately held, about to be bought out by a Chinese state enterprise. The deal is done, but not public. Inside information. A block of their physical palladium reserves is being offloaded discreetly before the announcement sends the price soaring. You have a contact, a disgruntled CFO. Whatever. The buy-in is everything he has left. The return, in 30 days, is enough to make Victor a distant memory and set him up as a legit tycoon. Bree whistled softly. It's perfect. It plays to his greed and his panic. He'll be salivating, but the Victor problem remains, even with a promise of future riches. They want their product or their money now. That's the second sting. I said, tapping the warehouse schematic. We solve the Victor problem for him. Anonymously, we leak the location of Unit 7B and the access codes from the ledger to Victor's main rival, a crew from the south side, the O'Sullivan outfit. They've been muscling in on Malinob's territory for a year. We make it look like Leo double-crossed Victor, that he sold the shipment to the O'Sullivans. Zach's face broke into a grin of pure, wicked admiration. So Victor's enforcers stop looking for a missing shipment and start looking for Leo. And we provide the final nail, an anonymous tip to the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit, a data packet, Leo's ledger, the wire transfers, the gallery records, enough for a RICO charge. We make him the most wanted man in Chicago by both the streets and the feds. He'll run, Bree said. He'll try to grab whatever cash he has left and disappear, which is where the palladium scam closes the vice. I concluded, he'll pour every last cent into our fake commodities deal to fund his escape and his new life. He'll be transferring his money to us at the exact moment the police are knocking on his door and Victor's men are kicking it in. He'll have nothing, nowhere to go, no one to blame. The plan was audacious, insanely complex. It required perfect timing, flawless execution, and a chilling disregard for what might happen to Leo in the crossfire. Looking at Bree and Zach, I saw no hesitation, only a calculating assessment of risk and reward. I felt a tremor of something, not guilt, but a recognition of the abyss we were peering into. We were no longer just con artists. We were engineers of ruin. We're all in. Zach said, his voice firm. I'll build the Palladium platform, complete with fake news feeds, a shadow corporate intranet, the works. I'll also craft the leaks to the O'Sullivans and the feds. They need to be untraceable but credible. I'll sell Leo the dream, Bree said, a hard glint in her eye. The get-out-of-jail-free card that's actually a one-way ticket to hell. And I said, we'll make sure the financial trail is a work of art. The pressure points, the timing of the inside tip, the way we present the Palladium opportunity as his only lifeline. The next 72 hours were a blur of relentless, clandestine work. Zach's Palladium play was a digital fortress of lies, more elaborate than the art scam. Bree began the soft sell, weaving tales of her college friend who was now a whisperer on the Vancouver mining exchange. She showed Leo doctored screenshots of internal memos, secretive chat logs. She played on his fear, positioning the deal not just as profit, but as survival. With that kind of capital, Leo, you could tell Victor to go to hell. You could be untouchable. Leo, drowning, grabbed the rope. He authorized Zach, as the Vancouver-based escrow agent, to begin the due diligence on his remaining funds. It was a fishing expedition, giving us a complete map of every dollar he had left across 3 offshore accounts and a hidden domestic brokerage. $1.8 million. Meanwhile, Zach executed the other prongs. A packet of data.warehouse address, alarm codes, and a snippet of a conversation where Leo seemed to be arranging a side deal that was anonymously dropped into the digital lap of the O'Sullivan Outfits enforcer. The tip to the FBI was more meticulous, a curated selection from the ledger, the Midas Holdings corporate structure, and a timeline of the gallery washes, sent from a hijacked server in Eastern Europe. The pressure built. We could track it in real time. Leo's communications with Victor's people stopped abruptly, a sign they'd received our tip and were now planning, not negotiating. Local police chatter Zach monitored showed increased. Quiet interest in the Pilsen warehouse district. The trap was being set. Then, the crisis point. Bree called us, her voice a tense whisper from Leo's bathroom. It's bad. He's unraveling. The O'Sullivans must have made contact with Victor. He got a call, went white. He's been pacing for an hour. Then, he grabbed me by the arms, shook me, demanded to know if I'd ever spoken to anyone, if Maurice was checking up on him. He's paranoid. He's dangerous. My blood ran cold. Are you safe? Can you get out? Not without blowing everything. I played hysterical, cried, asked how he could accuse me after everything I was doing for us. It had calmed him. For now, he's apologizing, but it's a bandage on a hemorrhage. He's talking about the Palladium deal like it's the second coming. He wants to move the money. Tomorrow. Tomorrow's too soon. Zach's voice crackled over the secure line. The Fed's package needs another 24 hours to work its way through the system. If he initiates the transfer and then gets picked up immediately, the funds could be frozen in transit. We lose everything. We need to delay him. I said, thinking frantically, Bree, can you introduce a problem? A hiccup? Something that makes tomorrow impossible, but the day after a certainty? I can try. The CFO's wife is having surgery. A family emergency. It's delicate. We can't rush the final authorization. Do it and sell it. This is the moment. Bree, make him believe that this one, last, excruciating delay is the only thing standing between him and salvation. The next 36 hours were an eternity. Bree walked a razor's edge, oscillating between soothing Leo's rage over the delay and stoking his anticipation for the payday. Zach and I watched, helpless, as the external pressures mounted. A car, unfamiliar and idling, was noted on the street cam near Leo's building. 2 suits, too clean-cut for the neighborhood, were asking questions at his office building. The O'Sullivans had made their move on the warehouse. Police reports later would show a botched burglary with nothing taken but significant forensic evidence collected. Finally, D-Day arrived. Bree gave the all-clear. The CFO was ready. The transfer window was open for 3 hours only, due to international time zones. From the safe house, we watched the digital ballet. One by one, Leo liquidated his hidden accounts. We saw the orders flow. $950.000 from the Caymans. $420.000 from Singapore. $430.000 $0 from the domestic brokerage, a total of $1.8 million. It snaked through a series of intermediary accounts Zach had set up, a dizzying digital shell game, before finally pooling in the Palladium escrow. Transfer complete. Funds received. The message flashed on Zach's primary screen. For a moment, there was silence. We had done it. We had taken everything. Then, Zach's police scanner app erupted. Units responding to 2240 North Lincoln Park West. Report of a 10 to 91. Possible 10 to 15. Caller states, hearing threats. Possible firearm. Leo's address. The Fed tip just hit the active queue. Zach said, his eyes on another monitor. They're dispatching. And I've got a visual from the street cam. 2 black SUVs. No plates. Just pulled up. For men getting out. Not the suits. These are not cops. Victor's collection agency. Bree, I said into the comms. My voice tight. Get out. Now. It's happening. I'm at the service entrance. Her voice came back. Breathless but calm. I'm clear. On the audio feed, we still had patched from a bug in the apartment. We heard the pounding on the front door. Leo's voice. Shrill. Who is it? I'm calling the police. The sound of splintering wood. Heavy footsteps. Guttural voices demanding. Where is it? Leo, where's our product? And then, over the chaos, the piercing sound of the building's front door buzzer. An official voice. FBI, open up. The audio dissolved into a cacophony of shouts, crashes, and Leo's raw, screaming panic. Then, a gunshot, a single, sharp report that made us all flinch. The audio feed went dead. We sat in the silent, safe house, the weight of what we had orchestrated pressing down on us. There was no victory cheer, only a hollow, breathless stillness. Zach broke it, his fingers flying over a keyboard, scrubbing all connections, burning the digital safe houses. The Palladium funds are already fragmenting, moving to the final holding accounts. He looked at me. Your share. It's in the account we discussed. The $250K, plus the 15% bonus we agreed on for Phase 2. It's yours. The rest is ours. We're gone in 6 hours. Bree slipped into the room 10 minutes later, a small duffel bag in hand. She looked pale but composed. She went straight to a laptop, initiated a data purge sequence. He was on his knees when I left, she said, her voice devoid of any emotion. The FBI had their guns on the guys from the SUVs. Leo was just crying, begging. He didn't even see me go. She pulled a single, folded piece of paper from her pocket and handed it to me. I left this for him, on the kitchen island, next to the empty champagne bottle from our celebration last night. I unfolded it. It was a printout, in large, bold font. For every dollar you took from Seely, and for every life you ruined, enjoy the consequences. I looked at her, then at Zach. They were already ghosts, disconnecting from this place, from this city, from me. It's over, I said. Not a question, but a statement. For us, yes, Zach said, closing the last of his laptops. For you, the cleanup begins. Your divorce just got a lot simpler. He's going away for a long, long time. If he makes it to trial. Bree shouldered her bag. She gave me one last, inscrutable look. There was no camaraderie there, no friendship forged in fire. There was a professional respect, and a final, unspoken warning to never speak of this again. Goodbye, Seely, she said, and then they were gone, leaving me alone in the sterile, empty room, with the echo of a gunshot in my ears and a fortune in ill-gotten gains waiting in a numbered account. The revenge was complete. It was more total, more devastating than I had ever dreamed. So why did I feel so empty? Silence. It was the first thing I noticed. Not the absence of sound. The city's rumble was a constant through the safe house windows, but the absence of that low, corrosive hum of tension that had been my companion for weeks. The scheming, the listening, the calculating of every word and move. It was over. The machine we'd built had completed its final, brutal cycle, and now it was just me, standing in the exhaust. The room felt cavernous without Bree's charged presence, without the glow of Zach's screens. I was alone with the ghosts of our conspiracy and the stark, digital proof of its success. My hands were steady as I opened the laptop they'd left for me. A final, clean machine, a single file, password protected with the code Ferrari 2025, a parting jab from Zach. I was sure. Contained the accounting, a spreadsheet, beautiful in its ruthless clarity. Total funds acquired, $3.8 million. Expenses, server costs, forgery payments, the actor who played Uncle Maurice, the compromised professor, $127.000, net, $3.673.000. My share was highlighted. The agreed upon $250.000 reimbursement, and next to it, a bonus, 15% of the remaining net after expenses, a figure that made my breath catch, $520.200, a total of $770.200, transferred, as per the attached blockchain confirmation, to a new, anonymous offshore account in my control. The numbers glowed on the screen. It was more money than I'd ever had at once. It was blood money. It was justice money. The lines blurred until they vanished. A second file contained instructions for accessing the funds, layering them into legitimate assets. And a terse, final note: burn this. Burn everything. You were never here. We never were. Good luck. Z. I followed the instructions. The laptop's hard drive was wiped with a military-grade program. The burner phones were disassembled, their chips crushed and flushed. I packed a single bag of my clothes from the safe house, leaving behind everything else. The apartment key I left on the counter. As I closed the door for the last time, I felt nothing. I was a ghost, just like them. My own apartment in the West Loop was a sanctuary frozen in time. The quiet I had once craved now felt alien, a vacuum waiting to be filled. I poured a drink, not to celebrate, but to feel something. The bourbon tasted of smoke and oblivion. The news found me, as I knew it would. It was a minor story at first, buried in the local crime blotter. Lincoln Park raid, Net's real estate broker. Ties to organized crime suspected. No names yet. Then, the floodgates opened. Leo's handsome, smirking headshot was suddenly everywhere. The Tribune, luxury broker charged with fraud, money laundering in multi-million-dollar scheme. Crane's Chicago business. Vance Realty implodes as feds allege vast art-based money laundering operation. The details were salacious, pieced together from the anonymous tip and the chaotic raid. The hidden accounts, the fake art, the Pills Inn warehouse filled with forged paintings, and, ominously, packages of an unspecified white powder that turned out to be high-grade baking soda. Victor's lost shipment. The involvement of the Malinov and O'Sullivan organizations was hinted at, adding a layer of violent glamour. I sat through my divorce proceedings like a spectator at my own play. Lau, represented by a harried public defender, looked like a photocopy of his former self. Gaunt, jumpy, his expensive suits replaced by county-issued scrubs. His eyes, when they flicked to me, held a toxic brew of hatred and utter, bewildered confusion. He had no idea how it had all fallen apart. My lawyer, a razor-sharp woman named Diane Costas, who lived for this kind of carcass-picking, was magnificent, given the criminal charges against Mr. Vance, which render him incapable of contributing to or managing marital assets, and the clear evidence of financial dissipation and fraud on his part. My client seeks a straightforward judgment of dissolution and a quitclaim deed to the Lincoln Park property, free and clear of any interest from Mr. Vance. in lieu of any further equitable distribution. Leo's lawyer sputtered, "Your Honor, my client's assets are frozen. The property may be subject to forfeiture." Precisely. Diane cut in smoothly. "My client is offering to take a heavily encumbered, legally problematic asset off the court's docket. It's a practical solution. Otherwise, we will pursue a detailed accounting of every marital dollar Mr. Vance diverted to his criminal enterprises, which will complicate the federal government's case and his eventual restitution orders immensely." The judge, a no-nonsense woman with tired eyes, saw the expediency. The divorce was granted. The apartment was mine. Leo got nothing but the crushing weight of his impending criminal trial. As the gavel fell, his shoulders slumped in final defeat. He was led away, not even glancing back. I felt a clean, quiet click, like a lock disengaging. He was out of my life, permanently. A month later, I met Diane for a final wrap-up at the Gauge, a bustling restaurant across from Millennium Park. The city was moving on. And so, slowly, was I. "The forfeiture hearing is next week," Diane said, sipping her Pinot Noir. "The feds are salivating over the gallery and the offshore accounts. They'll get them. The apartment, however, is yours. The lien from the first mortgage is substantial, but it's an asset. You'll want to sell it quickly, before the building gets a reputation. List it," I said, "as is. Price it to move. I never want to set foot in it again." "Wise." She eyed me over her menu. "You're handling this all remarkably well." "Silly. Most of my clients in your situation are either catatonic or drunk with schadenfreude for a year." I shrugged, toying with my fork. "I did my grieving for that marriage years ago." "Diane, what's left is just administrative cleanup. And the money?" she asked, her voice dropping slightly. "Your finances are healthy. Surprisingly so, given the circumstances." I met her gaze evenly. "I've always been good with money, and I had a separate life. Financially, one he couldn't touch. It wasn't a lie. It just wasn't the whole truth." She accepted it with a nod. "Good. Use it. Build something new. You have a rare chance for a clean slate." The clean slate felt like a blank, terrifying page. The money in the offshore account was a sleeping dragon. I transferred my reimbursement portion, $250,000, into my regular accounts, using a series of small, legitimate-looking transfers from a purported overseas investment fund Diane helped me structure. It paid off the remainder of my West Loop mortgage and left a healthy cushion. The bonus money, the $520.200. I left where it was. Blood money. I didn't know what to do with it yet. Restless, I did the one thing I'd always talked about, but Leo had dismissed as pointless tourism. I booked a ticket to Iceland. For 2 weeks, I disappeared into a landscape that mirrored my internal state. Stark, beautiful, brutally indifferent. I hiked across black sand beaches, soaked in geothermal pools under the gray sky, and watched the sun barely set over glaciers. The silence there was different. It was ancient and clean, scouring me of the last residues of Chicago grime and conspiracy. I was in a tiny cafe in Reykjavik, watching rain lash the window, when my phone buzzed. A news alert. Chicago real estate broker convicted on all counts in money laundering. Fraud case. I clicked it open. Leo had been found guilty on 12 counts. The ledger, the gallery, records, the testimony of a terrified art expert and a turned low-level member of the O'Sullivan crew had sealed it. Victor Malinov was still at large, but Leo was going away. The judge, citing the callous exploitation of the elderly and the profound corruption of the financial system, sentenced him to 22 years in federal prison. A photograph showed him being led from the courtroom, head down, the flash of cameras reflecting in the dull sheen of his handcuffs. I felt nothing. No triumph, no pity, just a final, quiet acknowledgement that a toxic element had been safely sequestered. I closed the article and finished my coffee. back in Chicago. The slate was no longer blank. It was waiting. Callie took me to lunch at Girl the Goat, a celebration of sorts. So, she said, after we'd ordered, the parasite is excised. The apartment is sold. You're debt-free and gainfully unemployed. What's next for Celie Vance? Returning to the soul-crushing world of investment banking to make other rich people slightly richer? I swirled the wine in my glass. I've had an offer from Greystone Partners, head of a new distressed assets fund. It's more money, more power, more of the same, just with a fancier title. Callie raised an eyebrow, and I turned it down this morning. Her face broke into a wide, genuine grin. Thank God. I was worried the Ice Queen persona had become the real thing. So what then? I'd been thinking about it in Iceland, amidst the vast emptiness, thinking about the ledger, about the elderly woman in Logan Square, about the cold, systematic way Leo had viewed people as revenue streams or obstacles. And I thought about the $520.200 gathering digital dust. Do you remember Sarah Lynn? From business school? The one who started that organic baby food company that crashed and burned when her investor pulled out? Yeah, she's trying to reboot. As a co-op, sourcing from urban farms. She can't get a loan to save her life. I took a deep breath. I'm thinking of starting a fund. Very small, very targeted, not venture capital, more like rescue capital, for businesses owned by women who've been screwed over by predatory partners, lenders, divorces. We take a tiny stake, provide mentorship, help them rebuild on their own terms. No vultures, just scaffolding. Callie stared at me, her eyes softening. Silly. That's incredible. And wildly unprofitable. Probably, I admitted with a small smile, but it might be useful. And the seed money is there. I didn't elaborate. She didn't ask. What will you call it? She asked, her voice warm. I don't know. Something solid. Anchor point. Maybe. We talked for hours. The conversation easy and full of a future that felt, for the first time, like my own design, as we were leaving, stepping out into the bright, cutting Chicago wind. Callie looped her arm through mine. I have to ask, she said, her tone light but her eyes serious. After all that, are you done with men? Permanently sworn off? I laughed, the sound surprising me with its ease. I looked out at the gleaming towers of the loop, at the relentless, ambitious energy of the city. I had outmaneuvered a criminal, conspired with con artists, and emerged with my freedom and my soul battered, but intact. I'm interested in a lot of things. Gull, I said, squeezing her arm, but my next partnership, personal or professional, will be built on two things: absolute transparency and a hell of a prenup. I grinned. Or contract. Epilogue. 6 months later, the sun streamed into my home office, illuminating the blueprints for Sarah Lynn's new co-op packaging facility. Anchor Point Fund had its first 3 investments. The money was moving, slowly, carefully, doing tangible good. The West Loop apartment was my home, filled with my books, my grandmother's dove, and the quiet peace of solitude. A news aggregator alert popped up on a secondary screen, a service I kept for morbid curiosity. Interpol alert. Notorios con artist due suspected di Monaco duelist. The article was vague, but the artist's sketches that a striking woman and a sharp-featured man were familiar. They were crude, generic, but I knew. Bree and Zach, they were still playing their game. On a bigger board, I felt no fear, no connection, just a distant, professional acknowledgement of their skill. I closed the alert and went back to Sarah's supply chain projections. Down on the street, the city pulsed, full of predators and prey, builders and destroyers. I was none of those things anymore. I was something else. I was Celie Vance. I was free, and I was just getting started. I picked up the phone and dialed Sarah. Hey, it's Celie. I've been looking at the vendor list. I think we can get a better rate on glass jars if we go direct to the manufacturer in Indiana. Let me run the numbers for you. The future was a spreadsheet I was finally excited to fill.